Hi, everyone. You are about to hear and watch a conversation I've just had with Annie Lisa, who is the sister of Dr. Teresa Sievers, who was murdered in 2015. And the details of that you'll learn more of. But I want to give you a disclaimer that there's not a disclaimer. We're not going to go into any of the horrific and violent things that happened, other than just to name it. And that's for a very good reason. This conversation is the story behind the story. So, in true crime stories, there is normally a focus on the victim, the perpetrator, the mystery of what happened, the investigation, and often too much of a focus on the horrible things that happened. The piece of it, however, that's often missing is the story of the soul of the person who died, the soul of the murder victim. What happens after a person transitions to the other side? They realize there's been a murder. Everyone in their family is broken to pieces. What happens next? How does that person console the family? What messages come through? And this is precisely the conversation that I had with Annie. What happened after her sister was murdered? So buckle in your seatbelts, because Annie has got incredible energy and she's got such a passion for her mission. And it is going to be a fun and inspiring conversation, something that I really hope will bring some hope and solace to be able to extract that from the horrible events that happened that we can't change. So get ready, guys. Welcome, Annie, to the Shattering Place podcast.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to go straight to the elephant in the room. Listeners and viewers will know by the title that there was a murder. And so this is why we're here. In 2015, your sister, Dr. Teresa Sievers, was brutally murdered. I mean, it was gruesome and horrific. And the pursuit then of the perpetrators and the trial of her husband and the men he paid to kill her was one of the most sensational murder trials in Florida in recent history, I believe. And the trajectory of the media interest in this murder case and this true crime has not stopped since 2015. There have been many documentaries made on YouTube. Another documentary coming out, I believe, in the next year. It's been on 48 Hours. It's had millions of views. So we have to name it. But in naming it, we're also not here to cover that story. That story other people can look up themselves. We're here to tell the story behind the story and to extract from this victim perpetrator horrific crime something of hope, something multidimensional, which is the whole point of my podcast, something about the existence of life beyond death, so that Teresa also can tell some of her story through you and through the book you've written about it.
Well said. Well said. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you for this platform to have. I don't know why I'm getting emotional all of a sudden. Like, I don't know what's going on. But because I am just so excited to have this space and this opportunity to have this very timely and very important discussion about tapping into and awakening to higher levels of consciousness. Because let's just talk about this elephant in the room. Look at what's going on in the world. And this is why I wrote this book. I had no idea. Teresa and I had no idea 11 years ago when we had all of these epiphanies that it was going to be this far down the road and it was going to look like this. We only knew that there was going to be some real problems. It was going to be apocalyptic. I mean, I know that sounds like a dramatic word, but look around, everybody. So I'm so grateful that you have been brave enough and diligent enough to take the time it takes to do something like this and create the space to, yeah, to have this discussion that goes beyond the murder of my sister. So, where do you want to start?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many places to start. I just want to start with the observation that I too have gone in down the true crime rabbit hole. I've watched the documentaries, and it makes me quite emotional actually. Where is Teresa in all of this? It's so focused on the brutality of what happened and the trial and all of that. But, you know, she had this energy, this electric energy and passion and enthusiasm. And she had so many roles in her life. She was a doctor, she was a thinker, a researcher, researching energy healing, alternative medicine. She was a mother. There's so many things. And I found myself just impatient and frustrated. I wanted to know more. And it was only when I read your book that I got that more, because like you, I understand that life doesn't cease at death and that our loved ones are around us. So her story continues. It continues. So we can start anywhere with that, but perhaps tell us a bit about the Teresa that you knew. And obviously, like, so she was your little sister. So there's decades of information, but the piece of it that's so interesting is this journey that you had together, not just the love and the connection, but the journey of awakening into a multidimensional reality, and that path you had together, which was so brutally and abruptly just ended with her murder. So we thought, but then continued.
Yeah. So Teresa was one in a million, and you described her really well about she was brilliant. She was a doctor, she was a thinker, she was a researcher, she was a mother, she was a humanitarian. I mean, she adopted a young boy in Darfur, Africa. She was very active with Make Way Partners there. She was sat on the head of a board of Our Mother's Home, which was 14 mothers and their babies to keep them together. And a lot of these mothers were the result of incest or trafficking. She was your best friend. I mean, all of Teresa's friends thought they were Teresa's best friend because that's how she was, right? And she championed everyone. She wanted everyone to just get out there and kick ass and don't let anybody get in your way. Don't let anybody shut you up. Don't let anybody censor you. Just go do it. She had no tolerance for laziness. She had no tolerance for apathy. It was just, she was very driven by a strong conviction to make shit happen. And for her, that was, of course, all about her kids, her family, her friends. She was always there helping the homeless. She just was the busiest person I knew. But at the same time, she was also the funniest freaking person I've ever known. I mean, I truly have not laughed anywhere near as hard as I have when my sister, and like the back of my book, there's this great picture of Teresa and my head is up. And when someone sent me that picture, it was actually my brother's former wife, sent it to me right when I was working on the back cover. And I lost it. I just burst into tears because it said such a big part of what I lost because nobody can do that. And then when she showed me the rest of the picture, my brother's in the corner and he's laughing. So clearly Teresa said something to just set up the whole room. She loved to party. She loved to have a good time. She loved to let loose. She wasn't shy. She'd be the one to go, I'm taking my top off at this beach. I don't give a shit. Anybody got a problem with this? I mean, she was just, right? She was, I say she was, uh, there's just a dichotomy of Teresa. She was the professional, she was the researcher, she was the nerd, she was the valedictorian of her class, but she was the lizard queen, aka the lizard king, Jim Morrison. Teresa was the partier. So she was all of these things. She was a multifaceted person. And when she finally decided to go to medical school. I mean, she wanted to, but then she kind of backed down and then she goes, I'm going to do it, you know. She was going to be a PA and she was working at the local hospital and she was working with a bunch of doctors who were doing their rotations at our local hospital, who PS ended up becoming my sister's best friends, ended up coming to our apartment, and we would party up like crazy with these guys, singing and dancing and laughing. They were a great group of guys. And they said to her, Teresa, you're not a PA. You're a doctor. Like, don't even think about being a PA. You're a doctor. So she, you know, when she went to medical school and she got out, and of course we were so proud of her. She graduated valedictorian of her high school class, top of her medical class, and still had like the most amazing personality of anyone we knew. She was really annoyed that she was just prescribing drugs. It's not what she wanted to do, you know? And at the same time, um, she was starting to uncover some information, you know, and really just saying, you know, there's got to be more to this. So she started to get herself more educated with, you know, the basic three-dimensional things, supplements, exercise, like, let's get beyond this. Let's try and like see what you're eating and get into optimal health. While Teresa's going through all of this, um, I was starting to have a spiritual awakening right around the time when Teresa graduated from medical school. And it was kind of one of those things when you notice that you're being noticed, you know, when you have thoughts, right? That you think only you're thinking, and then they're being reflected back to you in weird ways. And as I always say, I'm not talking about like seeing a ladybug or a dragonfly and, you know, and thinking it's your Aunt Lucy. No. And I'm not saying that your dragonfly or your ladybug wasn't anyone's Aunt Lucy or grandmother. I'm talking about really dynamic shit, you know, that you go, whoa. Um, that kind of stuff started happening to me in a real big way. And Teresa was really excited about it. And while all of these incredible things are happening to me, Teresa's starting to do Bruce Lipton research, epigenetics, and noticing that no matter how healthy she gets her patients, and no matter how many degrees and letters she gets after MD, her patients are doing everything right. They're eating right, they're meditating, she's got all the allergens out, there's no gluten, there's no dairy, they're vegetarians, they're meditating, they're running, and they're still not well. And they're meeting the bar for her various diagnostic testing, which was much more is much more stringent than traditional Western medicine. It was functional medicine, so the bar was a lot higher, and they were like, but they were still struggling. So while she was having this incredible experience and really starting to see that emotions were involved and starting to bring Reiki into her practice, which was a big deal 11 years ago. Because I mean, think about it. I mean, I got my Reiki one 30 years ago. Nobody knew what Reiki was. People think what I do today is Reiki. I'm like, there's more than Reiki out there, everybody. There's so much more, right? People are waking up a lot more now. But Teresa also ended up getting certified in energy medicine, which is totally nuts, with the late Dr. Norm Shealy, and his protege was Dr. Carolyn Mace. So she was like really well connected there. So we were both so excited about what was happening. I had contact with my guardian angel. I was having a profound communication with departed loved ones and all these synchronicities. And we both felt very innately and deeply that, you know, this excitement that we had was happening for a reason. Because when you're really excited about something and you get the chills, you're on the right path. I mean, that's your body and your guidance system saying, go, go, go. And what we kind of felt was each in our own little worlds that we were supposed to share what we were understanding. So this idea of reality, the structure of reality, and who we are, and energy, and all of these things, that it would become more of a catalyst to bring these conversations into the mainstream and less of this sort of esoteric woo-woo idea that, you know, that was the goal. And things really started to kick up, and we had this real mystically charged weekend on September 26th through the 28th in 2014. And I always laugh because, of all places, it was in Newark, New Jersey. Not what you think of when you think of a mystically charged place, but alas, that's where it was. And this weekend was so electric. It was the numbers, reoccurring numbers. We had total recall of epic dreams, a total recall of my sister, like in a trance, that I totally forgot about. And I don't think I ever told her. I may have told her like when I was 14, but like we had no recall of these mystical unfoldings. They were profound, they were intense, and they were continuous. Like, so by the time we left that weekend, we understood that we had a mission, that this unfolding that was happening for each of us was actually a much larger call to action. It was a mission, a planetary purpose to support humanity at some point in the future, a point that we knew would be, like I said, potentially an apocalyptic future. And, we can talk about, what does that mean, right? It's a metaphor. It's, the two earths, the whole nine yards. But we were clearly guided. Our knowing was undeniable. It was unshakable. So we just thought, well, we'll follow the breadcrumbs and we'll see exactly what this mission looks like, exactly like how this is supposed to unfold. So naturally, my sister, she's already like, she's getting a PR company, she's doing TV shows, because that's Teresa. Everything is like big, you think in this, and Teresa's like, and 9 months to the day, I I still remember when I figured it out. Like I knew when I was counting back, I knew it was going to be a profound number. It was 9 months to the day of that mystical unfolding and that knowing of our mission that my sister was murdered. And that's just such an incredible metaphor. And well,
Yes.
that's a lot right there. So we can unpack that any way that you want before I get into like what she told me after that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember from your book that 9-month period, you referred to it as a gestational period. 9 months is really significant, isn't it? That's not just as a metaphor, referring to birth, childbirth, but in many different contexts, that 9 months is considered that, as you put it, gestational metaphor. Something was gestating there in the 9 months between that mystical weekend in Newark and the day of her murder. So I'm really curious about what unfolded over those 9 months. Did she seem to, looking back, we can never see these things in the moment or looking forward, but looking back, does it seem like something was gestating in those 9 months? And I mean, it could have gone another way, right? She could have not been murdered. She could have been injured. Anything could have happened. But did you see that there was a knowing? Was there an urgency in her to do it? What do you make of it when you look back at that 9-month period?
Wow. So nobody's ever asked me that question. So, like you said, it's a gestation period. I mean, Mark Sievers was gestating, right? He was
Her
coming up
husband.
with her husband, yeah, was coming up with a plan. Um, she was certainly gestating in her realization that her marriage wasn't what she thought it was. Did she think he was going to kill her? I don't think so. I really don't. I mean, maybe in those last that day something was off, but no. But she knew, I think she knew that Mark could be very intense. She knew it was time to end that relationship and birth a new version of herself. And of course, my life was going to be completely different. Teresa, as I discuss in the book, we used to talk all the time. Like we just wanted to be like pretend that we still lived right next to each other. So we were on the phone a lot. Like sometimes we'd be on the phone for 2 hours, just like, what are you doing? I'm cleaning out my closet. And this is before like FaceTime was big or earbuds. We would just be on speaker, and I would just take her with me everywhere, everything I was doing. And towards the end there, she was very, very poor. She was just like, she seemed to not be able to move fast enough to do all the things that she wanted to do. And I really think that is because a part of her knew she just didn't have a lot of time. And I also think on that last weekend, as I talk about that, she definitely knew that something was amiss. She was really trying to figure something out, and she just didn't have it all together yet. I have no idea where she was, again, because I didn't take that phone call. So I never got to, that weekend was so busy. I didn't get to say, so what the hell's going on with your stupid husband? That's how we would talk to each other. What's going on with your stupid life anyway? Did you ever do this? Did you get rid? Are you still with this person? Whatever it was. What's your stupid boss doing? What's this? What's going on? I never got to say anything because there was no time. It was a busy, busy weekend, and we weren't talking that much because she was on the go, on the go. In fact, when when we looked at her house after, one of my friends said, I can't believe, because my our good friend and my brothers cleaned up the crime scene,
Oh,
and that asshole let them do it. But what they said, man, your sister's house was so dirty. Now my sister, oh, there will not be dirt in the house. The house is clean. It was dirty. So something was really off. I didn't have a chance to discuss it. And had I taken that last phone call that she made to me, she made a couple phone calls. I was one of the last, another friend she had called because she had all this time at the airport. Had I taken the time to speak with her, I would have had like 2 hours of Teresa time, and she would have started to open up because that's just how it would have gone down, and I would have had a better insight into what was
yeah.
going on.
Yeah. I remember you mentioning that in the book, but you also made the point in your book that, look, you know, her husband was just not well, broken, narcissist, not obviously not well. And if he was planning this, he would have done it in any way he could. It could have been home, it could have been the office, it could have been try once, she's not there, try again, as you point out in the book. If this is going to happen, quite possibly no one could have stopped it. And to that point, I don't want to linger on Mark Sievers. He's on death
Mhm.
row, isn't he? And
Yeah.
he is he is locked away. But what I want to say about that, the piece of it that there were problems in the marriage, she knew there was something, everyone felt there was something not right with him, is, it's not uncommon for a person who has that empathic ability to end up with someone who is not well in that way, who's manipulative, abusive, personality disorder. It happens
Hey,
sometimes
are
to
you
the
there?
best of people, and particularly people who have that big heart. With that big heart, you want to be, you see your partner for the potential, for the good things. But she was starting to see the cracks. She was starting to see the cracks. And I like what you said, that she knew that there was an ending coming in some ways, and she was birthing the new. There was that 9-month period of something. She didn't know it was her life, obviously, but something was ending. She knew deep inside there was some phase of life ending and there was a new birth coming, and she was, impatient for that birth to happen.
Yeah. And she said so many prophetic things. Like, I could be dead someday, or I thought I was going to die. And this was all within like 48 hours. And in some cases, 12 hours before she was murdered. She had said, to a patient, if I could just get out of this body, I could just get so much shit done. That says a lot about the sense of urgency she had to get her message out there about healing.
Clearly, Teresa knew that there was a death birth process happening underway in her life. She didn't know, obviously, she was going to die, much
Right.
less be murdered by her husband. But she knew that there was something, it was a part of her experience that was dying, and there was something new being born. And she was impatient to make that happen. Little
Definitely.
did she know that birth was really going to flower after her death, which seems crazy to, normal people, maybe. But in a multidimensional world, it also makes sense
Right.
that she is dying to be born into expanded capacity, and that's why you're here, essentially, is to talk about those communications and what exactly was born after her death.
Yes, exactly. And that's exactly the point of the mission, is to talk about our expansion and our capabilities beyond this physical form. And so Teresa's gestation period brought her to a new uh, version of herself, the multidimensional aspect of herself, where Teresa is just a small part of that. Although that's the energy that I connect with, because that energy is always accessible. In fact, your guest the other day was talking about that Teresa could be here as that energy, and she could also be incarnated somewhere else doing something else. I really believe, and I've been told, she's on the other side, helping to usher in this new experience that we're all going through right now. But what we ended up finding out was, first Teresa did have to tell me who murdered her. And she did. And she communicated with me in the most extraordinary ways. And I'll leave that for people to read in the book because, again, while the news didn't cover that, we have much more interesting things to talk about. I will just say that the kinds of signs Teresa gave me were precise, like the name, the murder weapon, like all of it. Okay. So just as a little teaser there.
Before anyone knew, and really before anyone suspected. And all those details are in Annie's book, What My Sister Told Me After She Was Murdered. So I recommend reading it to hear all of these multidimensional details, but they were pretty incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
hard to ignore. I mean, it was just like you were just being pounded with it moment, like everywhere you looked, everything was
It was
saying like,
stupid. It
Mark did it.
was like, it was crazy. And then, once, like, she had to get that out of the way because I needed to know. I needed to know so that I could now start, talking to investigators about the other things that were, well, they're just weird. And, you don't want to send anybody to jail for murder unless you're positive. Well, I was positive now without any doubt. And then once all of that was done, I was just kind of like, well, what about the mission? Which I had been asking that like almost moments after she was murdered, because that's how much it was at the forefront of our life. That's how important it was. That's how special it was. That's how profound it was. It did not just disappear that weekend and we went on to our lives. It was an understanding. It was a calling, you know? So I think it was after all of them were arrested and we could breathe, you know, I kind of started asking her like, well, can you just tell me what the mission is now? Like, now that you told me who murdered you, I think that you can. But of course, she didn't make it that easy. So through a series of serendipity and that kind of comes around in a lot of different ways between what people told me and what my sister told me. I understood that the mission was about the subconscious. It was about um, how to navigate this planet, how to change the trajectory of this planet. and it was about healing, and it was about spiritual access. It was about both things that we were talking about. Teresa, like, let's heal the body, and me, let's tap into our multidimensional nature and start talking to departed loved ones and seeing what else we're capable of. I had taken a deep dive into quantum physics and started learning about, timelines and the new earth and quantum healing and the age of Aquarius and so many things. I mean, I think there's at least 7 pages, maybe, of resources at the back of my book of the things that I delved into when the various scientists and researchers and mystics, in the realm of, multidimensional nature and our human origins and expanded reality. So she serendipitously got me a Bruce Lipton video, which you can read about in the book. And it was the biology of belief. And it's when I understood that my subconscious was calling the shots in my life without my conscious permission. And I immediately was like, oh my God, this is it, because I immediately understood where I was in my life, and I also understood the ramifications at a spiritual level. Not just like, oh, so that's why I've been married twice. Oh, so that's why I'm a procrastinator. Oh, so it was like, oh, so that's why people aren't tapping into their full multidimensional self, because all of these limitations have been placed upon us to make us believe that we're nothing more than random biology and random, events in the universe, in the cosmos, but we're not. We're extremely special. And all of these beliefs have kept us in this matrix, as Bruce Lipton says. So when I saw this, again, through much serendipity, that I was even at this video that was on my computer, and Teresa confirming all the way, keep going, giving me all the green lights, dropping more breadcrumbs. And of course, what was the logical question after I realized that my subconscious had hijacked not only my life, but the entire human experience? Okay. So now what? Now what? How do I stop the subconscious from, telling me what to do and sabotaging every goal? And shortly after, I got my answer, which was this work that I do, Psych K. And I don't need to get into that because that's not the story. Because, as Bruce Lipton says, there's lots of different ways you can rewrite your subconscious. And he lists like 14 different modalities on his website. I use this tool called Psych K because that's what Bruce Lipton uses. And that's what my sister told me after she was murdered, plain and simple. But the big takeaway here, everybody, is the reason that we're stuck in these unwanted patterns, relationships, jobs, and friends and everything is because of the subconscious. And if I was going to, help support humanity, I needed to get my own shit together first. So I started with myself using this tool. I went and I didn't even, schedule an appointment with a facilitator. I just dove in head first. And the world's biggest professional procrastinator here, formerly, I'm a reformed procrastinator, changed my life very, very, very quickly. And that's how I was able to quit my corporate job, start my own company, get my website going, schedule talks, write this book, overcome this horrible tragedy of my sister, and really align myself with my purpose, which is this mission, And so, it kind of begs the question. So, like, who cares? Like, why do I care, Michelle, and everybody out there, whether or not you're living up to your potential and whether or not you've got your dream job, whether or not you've lost that weight you wanted to lose, or have the boyfriend that you want, or the house that you want, or because when we start to step into our joy and remove all of these three-dimensional sort of ego driven attachment things about ourselves and our relationships and our power and our safety and our lack and our want, when we get all this crap out of the way, hey, it's part of the deliciousness of life. It's why we wanted to be here. But when we hold on to it for dear life, it's a problem, guys. But when we learn to just let go, all these boulders are moved out of the way so that we can see clearly this beautiful light there that's inside of us, that's been hidden because it's been blocked by all of these earthly wants and all these distractions. It just happens. It's like if you run, right? A lot of things, like, you're going to enjoy the run, but you're probably going to lose weight. Your heart's going to do better. So it's just a subsequent beauty that happens when you start to remove obstacles that prevent you from enjoying your three-dimensional life. You start to have access to your multidimensional nature. You start to understand reality in a different way. It just happens. So I understood very early on. I saw this light. And of course, now, all these years later of doing this work, I guess 2016, 2017, I really have seen how it opens up your intuition and it opens up your understanding, and it makes you calmer and more peaceful because you understand reality in a different way. So
Mm.
we are all so focused on changing this craziness that's going on in the world. And I'm not talking about politics. So everybody just calm down. All right. Has nothing to do with it. All right. Because the essence of who we are is really our soul, and that is our subconscious. They're layered together. And if we want to change what's going on out there, we have to change what's going on in here. Okay? Because
Mm.
you we created it, first of all, because we created it, right? So, for the theist,
Mm.
that's the spiritual people, that's the law of attraction. Yeah, it's real. It is. It's not just like woo woo. Yeah, no, it's real. And for the scientists, it's the quantum theory. It's the same thing. And it's been proven again and again and again and again, but you haven't had access to it. It's not been part of the mainstream conversation. I'm trying to make it part of the mainstream conversation. That's why I'm here. So if we want to get rid of this stuff that we created, we have to put the oxygen mask on ourselves before we can assist other passengers and before we can change the world. Because when we do that internal house cleaning on our subconscious, it has a quantum effect. All right. I mean, it only takes that's the Maharani effect, like
Mm.
square root of 1% of a population to affect a population. But this is how we change the world. And this is what I'm extremely passionate about. I'm extremely excited about. And this is why I want to reach the masses. And this is why Teresa wants me to reach the masses, because this is what we understood. These are the apocalyptic dreams that we had. Okay, when I was 19 years old and I had this apocalyptic dream that I shared with Teresa that weekend in Newark, and Teresa shared her apocalyptic dream, it wasn't about pulling people out of fire and pulling people out of floods. It was about pulling people out of themselves to remember who they are. We need to remember who we are, that
Mm.
we are divine beings. And I love the way Greg Braden uses the word divinity. It's reclaiming our divinity, he says. It's overcoming perceived limitations. And these limitations are on our subconscious. And when we remove those, it's like removing a bunch of bags off of a hot air balloon. And that's, my want, my lack, my inability to speak my truth, my lack of confidence, my inability to have relationships, my anxiety, my depression, whatever it is. And we just start to soar.
Yeah.
I said a lot. So
Wow. Wow. I love your passion. I'm going to quote you from your book now. This is what you wrote. You wrote, "What? I know what you're thinking. How are we responsible for the sad state of humanity? And how are we supposed to fix it? And that brings me to the heart of this story. We are responsible. We did create it. And my dead sister told me how." I understand that from what you're saying and what you wrote in your book, that the two of you had already started to discuss this in the 9 months prior to her death. This idea that there's got to be a multidimensional mission. We've got to have a mission where we're bringing the unseen into the seen. And you didn't know how at that time. You didn't know exactly what. You hadn't found Psyche yet. You didn't understand, or it wasn't on your radar, right? The subconscious. And she was focused on the energy medicine healing bit. She was already doing TV shows. She was already getting out there. But, and to bring it back to the mission of this podcast, you know, my paradigm, my theory in my season 1, which is a solo narrative season, it's 10 episodes, and I the whole purpose of it is to argue with a lot of substantiation, because I have an academic background and I love to do the research, to argue that multidimensionality, in other words, that aspect of the world which is not locked into the 3D physical dimension, that understanding and embracing the reality of multidimensionality is the paradigm shift we need to save us as a humanity. Because once we understand that there is more to life than just flesh and blood and things, then we start to step into our own nature of being much more powerful, which is what you're saying. So it feels like the revelation, and actually my understanding now from a previous guest, Edward Tick, who's a psychotherapist, and he does a lot of work in Greece with war veterans. He was saying, you know, apocalypse is a Greek term that means to reveal. And we are in the apocalypse because we are in the times of revelation, where we're being shown the shadow. We're being shown what's wrong. In these times, what's going to save us? It's stepping into our multidimensional nature. It's understanding that we're more than just flesh and blood, and that we're actually connected to everything, to all of life, that at that subatomic level, we're just all atoms vibrating in space. There is no essential separation. We think there is, but this is how also we can understand life carrying on after death. And that was your revelation with your sister, that there needed, you didn't know what the vehicle would be, but you knew what it was about. And that's what this is about. So I understand that you're doing this through, you know, working with people one-on-one, but also speaking and writing about it. And I'm curious your take on how does this, because you said in this quotation I read, this is the sad state of humanity, and this is what will change it. How do you see this ripple effect playing out so that we don't end up on a timeline with all of the horrible stuff that you and Teresa both saw?
That's a loaded question. Well, I mean, some people are going to end up on that timeline. You heard that expression, and I don't mean to joke around so much, but it's my nature. How you show up now really matters. What the hell does that mean? I know what that means. You know what that means. It means energetically, how you show up is going to dictate where you're going to end up. Because there is a huge shift going on this planet right now, and it's been coming for a long ass time. Every time we all incarnated here, I don't know how many times I've been here. And hey, let's just pause, because like, in case there's people here going, well, what do you mean? And how do you know that that's true? And hey, you know what? Let's take a look at the internet. Does anybody want to explain to me how that works? Could you imagine explaining that, as I say, to the people of Jamestown in 1640? You can't. You couldn't. There's no reference point. We don't have a reference point of all this, but through the bravery and courage, through people like you, Michelle, and people who have shared extraordinary multidimensional experiences in books, there's great evidence of this. And it just kind of makes sense when you stop and think about it. I mean, do we really think that this is all there is? And everything that's happening around us that we're seeing with AI, it is nothing compared to what we're capable of. It's merely a reflection of what we're capable of, and so much more. As Greg Braden says, we are every AI software engineer's fantasy. They only wish that they could build something. I say to people things like this just to give them a reference point. And I think I asked you this: how long does it take to count to 1 trillion, right? Nobody knows. People ask, I don't know, 20 minutes. It takes 34,000 years, everybody, to count to 1 trillion. It takes 34,000 years. Jesus was 2,000 years ago. Okay. So put that into a context. Okay. We're 50 trillion cells, and each one of those little cells has a receiver. It has an antenna. It has voltage. One human being has the same power as 2.5 billion car batteries. Imagine what that means. And yeah, this is Greg Braden, Pure Human. Read it, read it, read it, read it. He's a rock star in the world of quantum physics. He and Bruce are going around having these conversations all over the world trying to help. This is their mission. I feel like I'm a little disciple of their mission. I'm trying to distill what they've taught me and what my own experience has been and the work that I do to help people understand.
Okay. But you are a woman, Annie, and we need women leaders. We need women making these statements, spreading this information, not just men, because there's a difference. There is a difference. We don't have enough. I don't know what to call us, like feminine spiritual leadership, feminine thought leaders, but we do need more women, and more women who are vintage, more women who are not just young women. And there are lots of brilliant young women, and I'm not disparaging anyone, but we do need women with a certain amount of life experience out there sending this message. So you do matter, and I wouldn't say you're a disciple. You're stepping into your own path, and your path is your path.
Thank you. Someone said to me once, I was like, this was a long time ago before my sister was still alive and I was still trying to figure out how to like talk about what I was understanding. I said, but this is all out there. And this person said, but people might only be able to hear it from you. And I was like, wow, I've definitely heard that about me before, So, so this is a really important time, everyone. And how you show up really matters. So if you're going to show up with all of these fear-based beliefs on your subconscious, and you can do the research on that because you can't escape it. It's like a program. Okay. If I want to, pull up software on this computer that I don't have, I can't. I could wish it and think it all day. It's not going to happen. And you cannot have an experience in your life if you don't have a subconscious program that doesn't support it. And I'm not going to get into the whole lecture. You can find me and I'll talk about it all day long. But the important information is that until we rewrite the subconscious and get rid of this resistance, whatever it is in our lives, and you all know what it is. We all know what our stuff is. And the more stuff we get rid of, the more stuff that comes forward. Until we get rid of it, we're going to suffer. We will not be going to this new earth. What's a new earth? It's not a physical thing. We are going to evolve. We are going to move beyond this physical experience. And there, you guys, you see it all happening already. You know how quickly things are manifesting. You're thinking about things. They're happening. Time is moving so quickly. Why? Because things happen so quickly. The whole time-space continuum is collapsing. All of that is feeding into our spiritual evolution right now. And if you want to end up in the place where you're just kind of floating along and you're having a different experience, you've got to cut those fear-based sandbags, or you will be living in an apocalyptic reality, because all these timelines are going to start to they are already existing at one time. We're just only aware of this one, but they're going to start to merge, and you're going to get hung up in a place where you're not going to be happy. So the takeaway here is get rid of the fear, embrace love, because there's only two emotions and there's only two frequencies, of which all others are merely a derivative, and it's love and fear. And if you don't let go of the fear, it's going to be painful. It's going to be painful. Turn the news off, tap into yourself, tap into nature, start with small steps, but we are the change that's going to, nothing around us is going to change. Okay. We are going to affect that. We have to start with us. And even if nothing were to change, how we perceive it, it's not going to affect us. It's like we're going to have an invisible shield, and we will not, it will be vibrationally impossible to be affected by these negative, lower vibrating things that are going on.
Hmm. Yeah. There's so much in what you're saying, and I'd love to contextualize it a little bit for the audience, for those of you out there who are going, well, what does this have to do with me? And, or, what is she talking about fear? And so going back to this moment when you and Teresa or sharing your stories of your apocalyptic visions, there was perhaps in that moment the sense that there is a timeline. I think there are probably multiple timelines. There is a timeline where things are going to, shit's going to go sideways, basically. It's not going to be good. There's going to be war. There's going to be scarcity, lack, who knows? And obviously, also, there are other potentials. Now, the way that I explain it in season 1 of this podcast, which is a 10 episode arc, is when there is a process of awakening or aligning to a more soul-based essential part of you, you are dropping your fear, you are dropping some of that karmic luggage, the trauma. Essentially what happens is you're stepping into a space of transmission. So through this process, through an individual process of, and it can be, many different modalities, Psyche is one, there are many different ways to climb this mountain, but through a process of being with, and I want to emphasize the being with, because I think essentially we're not broken, we're all well, there's nothing to fix, and part of the healing is the realization that there's always been a wellness underneath what seems to be the baggage. But however you
Yes.
perceive it, through this individual process of awakening, and I'd like to describe it very simply as a shift from identifying with your conditioned self, what society tells you, all of the fear, everything you're given by your family, etc., to shifting your identity to, I'm actually an eternal multidimensional being, and I am part of all of consciousness, and intimately connected with everyone and everything. When there's this shift in identity, then there is this is my theory. I'm not a scientist, I'm just a thinker, but this is my theory and my understanding from working with people very deeply and myself. There is then a transmission. You are a lighthouse unto others, because you're not holding on to all that darkness. You, as you're saying, you're not in that fear, you're in the light, and there is a transmission, and through that everything changes. Everything changes. You're in a world then, which is, you feel the interconnection. And that means that practically, tangibly, what does it mean? Yes, it means that you're not living in fear. It also means that you're walking with kindness. You're walking with compassion. You're walking with hope. You're making different choices practically in the world, because once you have that realization and you understand the intimacy of our connection, you're not going to make the same choices that you did before. You're going to see other people's suffering as related to your own suffering. You're going to be more helpful. You're going to make different choices around the food you eat, what you grow, how you interact with people, the choices you make in your profession. Everything changes.
I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. It's perfect. I think that is very digestible, and people can relate to that as themselves. It's like, yes, it's like you become different. You shed all of those ideas that limited you without your conscious knowledge. And when you start to do that, you allow yourself to have these new experiences that you hadn't even thought of. You will change. You will understand things in a completely different way. And when you're vibrating that way, because you've lost all of these fear-based obstacles and beliefs, you love unconditionally, which is really the key here. You start to have this vibration, and people say, what's vibration? But it's like, just think about love. Think about how you feel when you know you're loved unconditionally. You feel something. So like just to give it a little more of a reference point that we can understand. And it says right in the Bible, and I'm sure other religious texts and ancient scripts, all things are possible with love. What does that mean? It means you have access to information the higher up you go in vibration and frequency, there's more information available. So while it may seem very difficult to understand right now, and I get that, for someone who's just turning the page on this, it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It can seem overwhelming. But as soon as you start to take the steps one at a time, like you said, however you decide you want to climb that mountain, you can climb that mountain. You just got to decide that there is a mountain and that you can, in fact, climb it. And once you do that,
Mhm.
to do it is all on you. But the further you get and the closer you get to mounting, you're going to change and understand, and things become easier as the closer you get to the top. They just do. The understandings, intuition, all of these aspects that have been dormant inside of you are going to come through to your aid. And you won't even recognize your former self. I mean, I look back at myself and hey, I'm not the Buddha and I've still got a long way to go. I'm far from perfect. But I look back at myself 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, and I just experienced life in a very different way. And what brings me joy now and what satisfies me now and what satisfied me then are just, and the information that comes through now is pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. That leads me to ask you actually, how has your communication with your sister changed? How
Oh,
has it evolved over the years?
so I'm really bad at doing that daily. Hey, what's going on? Like, hey, like, should I sit down and close my eyes and hey, you got a message for me? Hey, you got something for me?
Mhm.
And I know, I mean, and I talk about it like the afterward section of my book kept getting longer and longer because I suck at that because I am so involved in the book, the podcast, the audio book for Audible that I'm doing now, and my business that I don't, and my own practice because I have clients and I work with myself that I don't. So I think she interjects loudly when she has to. I was really surprised that, interestingly, this whole weekend, this past weekend, June 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, was a weekend
Which is the
that,
anniversary of her murder. Yeah.
right, it's
Yeah.
precisely fell on the same days. And on the 28th, which was the actual day she was murdered, I mean, she's given me really crazy signs. And this year I was doing a Kundalini yoga class, and I don't do Kundalini yoga. Why? Because I can't sit still. So what does that mean? That I need to do Kundalini yoga because I need to sit still. So I went to this Kundalini yoga class and I actually loved it. And at the very end, I said to my sister in my head, I said, I know this is so hokey. And I know she's probably going, oh gosh, like, can you get on to something bigger than, can you give me a sign? But I was like, can you just give me a sign? Like, I know energetically you're very close. And the teacher played this beautiful song that repeats, may the long time sun shine. I didn't know what the words were. I learned later. I'll tell you. So when it was over, it was so beautiful. I said to the teacher, can you take a screenshot of that or something? Because I want to know, I want to look that up. And it was by Lonesome Sisters. And I thought, oh. And then I went, that's really the best you can do. That's just such a lame sign from you. I mean, it might excite other people, but you know, in the, context of the signs that you've given me, it's kind of lame. When I got home later, I decided to play it and I listened to the words and I started to cry. I could just hear her too. It was, may the longtime sun shine upon you. May the love surround you and guide you on and guide you on. That was it. But it was like really drawn out so you couldn't hear it. So she was giving me a blessing. She was invoking my guides. She was shining light on me and I could hear her going, duh. Like that's the gift. That's the gift. And I know the message is she's not going to give me any stupid ass messages anymore. She wants me to sit down and take this to the next level. because right now it's like, okay, you wrote the book, Annie. I'm happy for you. Great. You're doing all these great things, but I know that I need to step myself up a notch. I have a very big event in New York in November that I'm finalizing, and it will be a big talk because I'm going to be exposing myself to a much larger audience of much more sophisticated people, and that's a big deal for me. So I'm focused on that. But I know she's like, do a podcast, write another book, do this, do that. It's like, okay, I'm doing everything I can. And you know what? Whatever sticks, sticks. I will try to be better about sitting still and listening. I won't ask you for idiotic messages anymore. Teresa comes through and she'll underscore a situation when it's necessary. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything right now other than what just happened, but I can say, because I don't sit there like a good sister and have these conversations, Teresa will interject. If I have a thought, my phone will ding. It'll be 11:11, or I'll see her birthday like right after, and she'll be like, "Yes." But do I always have the ability to take that thought
Yeah.
to place? Not always.
Yeah. So it sounds like she worked really, really hard after her death to get you on track, to make sure you're okay, to tend to your grief, to tend to your evolution. And once she sees that you're on track, she's like, "All right, you're running with it. I'll interfere if you need an extra little push, little nudge."
Exactly. Exactly. In fact, I had a reading with somebody, which I don't do very often. I have a couple of people that I respect a lot, and I'm going to say, Kelly White is amazing. She's a protege of James Van Prague, and she's a lovely human, and she's an amazing intuitive. Um, but I went to see somebody else, and nothing was coming through. Nothing. No, and I was just like, what? And all I could hear in my head, and as I was thinking it, the woman said, "Your sister's saying you don't need me, and you just need to do this." She kind of saying, "You need to do this shit on your own." And I know that's exactly why nothing was coming through. Stop going to see somebody else and tap
Yeah.
into this. I'm right here. I'm right here. So yeah, I need to
Yeah.
level up too. I need to level up for sure.
Yeah, we all do. We all do. I think that's everyone's journey. We can use, external information when it's just important that we have it, but we all have that capacity. We all need to be I do too. I need to sit more in that knowing, you know. Um what is this event you have coming up in November? Can you share more about that?
So I'm going to be stepping away from, reading from the book and talking about that. The book will kind of take a back seat, and of course it's always going to be my story, and I'll talk about, how I got here and why I'm doing the work. The talk is going to be on sort of like tapping into your divine intelligence to thrive, tapping into your DI to thrive in an AI world, so to speak. And my vehicle will, of course, be talking about Bruce Lipton's research, a deep dive into the subconscious, how it works, how it's downloaded all of our beliefs, how it creates, the printout of our life and our life experience. And the impetus for this was that Bruce Lipton came to this space in Greenwich Village about 2 years ago, and I actually got to meet him there, and I was so delighted. And at the end of, Bruce gets very deep into, all the research and the petri dishes and the protein chains because he's Bruce, and he's lovely and he's wonderful. And then when it's all over, everybody wants to know, like, well, how do I change my subconscious? And he was kind enough to say, hey, this is the tool I use. I use Psyche, and we have a lot of facilitators in the audience today. Raise your hand. So I did. And there were other people there, and people just were like flooding around us. So there is a hunger to understand this modality. And I believe a deeper dive into what does this actually look like in your life? Like all of this great stuff that Bruce presented. Let's talk about what it looks like and how it plays
Yeah.
out in your life, and sort of put all of that together wrapped in the message of, you know, let's tap into our divine intelligence and let's thrive, and let's change the trajectory of this planet. We have the power to do it. And give lots of these little reference
Yeah.
points, about the cells and about all these things I've learned from Bruce and Greg and others to help give people a context of, oh, well, maybe this is why this is possible. Because people go, well, how is all this energy medicine possible? Well, here's just a few facts. And here's some amazing things that have happened around the world about people who are growing organs and people who have spontaneously cured, cancer and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, that event will probably be on your website, which I'll be sharing in the show notes for sure.
Mhm.
Do you have a copy of your book to show us, or I'll just direct people to the show notes to grab it?
This is the book, and that's,
Oh, good. If you could lift it a little higher, a little higher.
yeah. So that's my beautiful girl. And there she is behind me in a Wonder Woman costume.
Yeah.
And yeah, she actually helped me
Beautiful.
design that cover, the book cover, serendipitously, all sorts of things that weren't available. For example, that photograph of her on the cover, I didn't have a high-res photo. And on her birthday, I of course asked her for a sign. I've been through my email with Teresa so many times because it's a treasure trove of memories. Somebody said, "Hey, can you see?" And I said, "Let me go check this email." And what did I find in the email that I'd been through over and over again? That high-res photo for my book on her birthday. So it was perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, check it out, everyone. What my sister told me after her murder by Annie Lisa, and the links will all be in the show notes, and as is her website, so that you can find out about any speaking events that she's involved in. And I expect to hear more from you in the future. I'm excited to hear how this all evolves and have another chat. Thank you so much for sharing this story and sharing Teresa with us, with the audience, and the true story of multidimensionality in your life and how it's evolved. And thank you for the work you do.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And thank you for this platform. And thank you for inviting me to be on your show and for the work that you do. So important. Thank you.